and welcome to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I'm your host, Mary Czarnecki, and I'm thrilled to introduce you today to Scott Parker. So if you don't know Scott, Scott is an educator, a team building facilitator, and an award-winning comedy performer. So get ready to laugh today, I have a feeling. And he is dedicated to promoting a positive culture in the workplace through team building and leadership training. Scott's got some good stories he's going to be unpacking for us today. So you are not going to want to miss this. If you've ever been curious about how one actually becomes a professional juggler or what it's like to actually retrace the Lewis and Clark trail, this is going to be the episode for you. So welcome, Scott. So happy to have you here on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Fantastic. All right, everyone get your sticky notes out. Make sure you've got your notes ready to go. Now, I know some of you guys listening and watching might be familiar, might know Scott even personally, but for those of our listeners and watchers today, Scott, that are meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing now, really helping people with team building, education, and also still helping people laugh.
Ooh, wow, where to go with this one? Improv. I guess it all goes down to improv. I have been teaching improv, performing improv my whole life because life doesn't have a script. Last time I checked, doesn't have a script. I'm always someone that's just gone for it. And I, whew, I use the basics of improv, which are positivity, fun, teamwork, and I use that in a corporate setting where I get people out of their comfort zone so gracefully and gently that they don't know they left their comfort zone. And next thing you know, we're having fun, we're laughing, and we're playing these fun games that get people to be more positive, have more fun. And what more is there to life than being positive and having more fun?
And I like how you said that too. I get them out of their comfort zone where they don't quite realize that they're out of it because then they're a little more open.
I think so. Yeah, my wife's really introverted, and she has always made a point of, she's like, not everyone's as outgoing as you, which I kind of joke. I'm not sure if I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, but I definitely have a switch that I can turn on when I'm in a group of people, and then I need that recharge. I need to be on my own. I always joke that when COVID happened, we were living in Colorado. We lived literally off the grid. We were 45 minutes outside of Steamboat Springs, Colorado, in a solar powered house on a half acre, and I don't have to go anywhere. Okay, I can do this. We homeschooled our kids, so it was just like we've been training for this for a long time. Anyway,
A lot of people found that kind of inner homebody.
yeah, I know I don't mean to make light of COVID, but we were certainly in a situation where it was okay for our family. But to go back to what you just said, my wife's not everyone is as comfortable in a group setting as you are. And so I'm always super sensitive to introverted people that have just as much to contribute, but I have ways of helping them get out of that comfort zone gracefully.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Because I think you make a fair point. I mean, I make my living speaking, running workshops, training people, working with teams and individuals. And it always blows my mind how the traditional meeting is a bit biased toward whoever is the loudest talker in the room, which is one of the reasons why I love being a facilitator and doing workshops like similar to what you do. But that sometimes the quietest person can have the most crazy off the wall ideas. Is that your experience? Have you ever seen that coming up in something you've been doing?
Absolutely. Just last week, I was back in my old home of Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I was hired to do a workshop. It's called the Sister Symposium. It's a 3-day female in the ski industry conference. And I did a improv workshop for 150 people.
Wow.
And so we broke up into groups of birth month. And so sprinkled out about the room were Januaries and Februaries, and it was great to see that. And we always do this, everyone's in a circle, so it's a safe space. It's not a one-on-one thing. I find a circle to be a safe space. And we do this game called Whoosh, where it's just this fun little energy game of passing this imaginary thing called a whoosh around the circle. And you pass it with creativity. Some people shoot it like a basketball, or some people shoot it like an arrow, or some people kick it, or they bounce it, or they throw it over their shoulder. And it is such a fun icebreaker that every one of the 12 groups was bought in and laughing hysterically and coming up with the most creative ways to pass this imaginary thing around a circle. And I always stop them and say, okay, which group do you think had the most creative way to do it? And every group raised their hand, like, we did it this way. And someone crushed whoosh down into powder and then blew it to the next person. And then when you get whoosh, it changes form and it could be a super heavy. And next thing, everyone's bought in. And then we go on to the next game and we're just rolling. Not sure what the
I love
question
that.
was.
Well,
I sometimes lose track of myself when I answer questions because I'd like to tell stories. So I'm not
no,
sure.
but I think that's such a great story because I think almost everyone listening can probably remember being in a meeting that started off super dry, right? You're just like trying to stay awake for the first 10 minutes of the meeting or the conference or whatever it is, versus imagining what it must have been like to be in that room where people are actually given permission by you to play, to have fun, to think differently. And the crazier the idea, the better, right?
Yeah. The theme of the 3-day conference was play and slay.
I love that.
And I was checking out of the hotel last week and the lady checking me out said, "Oh my gosh, I attended your workshop." She goes, "I cannot wait to incorporate some of the things you did into my next staff meeting because the staff meetings get so boring and I've got so many fun tools now to make my meetings a little more energetic." And oh my God, can I write that down? And I should have, but
Yeah, no, that's such an important thing because I think that, okay, for anyone listening or watching this, the next time you're in charge of running a meeting, this kind of stuff, I don't know, Scott, if you believe this, but I believe this, like that kind of stuff is not just for the offsite retreat, right? If that got baked into more everyday work, that could shift things. And it's not like saying, okay, you have to take 30 minutes out of your 1 hour meeting for this, but I don't know, what's your perspective on that?
I think if or I shouldn't say every meeting, if more meetings had a little bit of levity in them, I think it builds stronger teams. Your coworkers get to know each other a little better. And when you know each other a little better, that leads to more openness. And like you said earlier, there's some people that may have some really great ideas, but they're not comfortable sharing it in some of these scenarios. But now that extrovert got to know the introvert a little bit better, and it all takes teamwork to make this happen. And I just feel one of the next things I do, I wasn't able to do it in this big group setting, but when I work with smaller groups, I use this game that I just talked about, Whoosh, to get people, like I said, a little out of their comfort zone. But I tell them while they're playing Whoosh, I want you to think about something about yourself that is unique that other people may not know about you. And I try to exclude, I don't want to hear about your kids and I don't want to hear about your spouse. I want to hear something neat. I like gardening, especially this plant. I like to hike. I like to, something neat about themselves. We used to do this. I used to work as the education coordinator for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and we would do this game with new training groups that would come in, and you would learn the neatest things about your coworkers that you may not have learned otherwise. And now you have a connection that you can talk about at lunch or when you're heading in or out of work. But now you've made this connection. And I just think it makes a stronger, more cohesive team when you learn that the super shy person next to you plays cello for the Buffalo Hill Philharmonic Orchestra, but they're too shy to share that about themselves. But now you have this bond. And now you get a group of people to go watch them perform the next time. And now it just, I don't know, just makes a more cohesive team, I think.
I think that's so interesting. So one thing actually came up in a recent workshop I was teaching. I run a workshop for corporations on how to develop personal brands, right? How individuals within an organization can develop their own stories, right? Their own personal stories, which helps their career, their work, but then also reflects really well, usually on the team and the business. And one of the questions that came up was actually more on this thread of developing team culture, developing team bonding. So I know obviously I love the Whoosh game, by the way. That's such a brilliant idea. I hope everyone's taking notes. Get your sticky notes out. But that's a great in-person game. What can or what advice would you have for someone who's maybe listening to this or watching this who says, oh, okay, I like that idea. I have these meetings or have these containers or these opportunities to help people break down these walls, help people get to know each other. I think my team could benefit from that, but we're distributed. Like we meet virtually. What are you seeing as some ways that teams that aren't together physically, how can they still do this same kind of thing?
Wordle.
Okay, tell me
Wor-
more.
The New York Times game Wordle. Have
Uh-huh.
you played it before?
Yes, I actually play it with my 10-year-old every night.
I play it with my mom and my sister. They both live back east, and every day we text each other our scores. And actually, before you text your score, you text a meme of that score. So if I get a three, I'll text the Three Stooges or something goofy. So it's a little creative way of sharing your score. And then after all three of us post our number that we got, then we do a screenshot of the actual word. But it's a fun way of checking in each day with my sister and my mother. But teams could do that too, and it could be a little mini competition. Actually, at one time, we actually had a little spreadsheet going of who was getting what scores. And my sister, who's a speech pathologist, always wins, and it frustrates me. But I do a different word every time. She does the same word every time. And so there's all these theories of what's better, but it's a way of connecting. And so there's little ways where you can do that. It's a friendly competition. Oh, so and so got Wordle in two today. And now you're all like talking about what the word was. And oh, I should have guessed this one. But it's connecting, whether it's in person or virtually. And so there's lots of little games like that I think are worth their weight in gold,
Yeah.
because it's simple, but it's bigger than the game.
Yeah.
It's that human element of we're all doing the same thing at the same time. Maybe you just have this rule where don't play Wordle until we're hopping on, and then everyone gets their phones out and they play Wordle, and then you've got this few minutes of levity. So I don't know, things like that. There's definitely ways I think you can do that.
That's a great idea. But I think you mentioned a couple of key things about it, though, that they're all doing it at the same time. It's not a work thing. And it's something that they have in common. It's something that they can play together. They can do it together. Yeah. Awesome. So I know you told me there was a great story here, so I want to hear more about this. But how does one become a professional juggler? I need to know.
Good question, Mary. So I didn't learn to juggle till I was I think it was my senior year of college. A good friend who was a good juggler. I saw him juggling and I went, he did what everyone says. I could never learn to do that. And he's like, has anyone taught you how to juggle? No, nobody taught me how to juggle. He's like, let me teach you. And I played sports. I played volleyball, basketball, baseball, all the way through college. So catching and throwing balls is nothing new to me. I just never did it in the form of juggling. And so to learn to juggle, it's actually a series of steps. It is like the perfect metaphor for learning. So before you can do a three-ball cascade pattern, you have to learn how to throw one ball. And so he showed me how to throw one ball, how high you throw it, how you throw it from one hand to the next, and the rhythm. And then two, again, oh wow, this is super easy. It's not the way I would think you would do it, but next thing I know, it's 5 minutes later and I'm juggling three balls like I'd done it my whole life. And then when you're hanging out with people that know how to juggle, one of my close friends in high school he was our student council president, and he grew up in the juggling world where he was going to juggling conferences because his best friend's dad was the president of the International Jugglers Association. So all through high school, I'm watching this guy named Andy juggle three, four, five balls and bounce juggle and juggle rings and clubs and swords and torches. And I'm just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Juggling is just one of those skills that I've always admired. And so now I know how to juggle. All of us friends are hanging out. And what do you do when you're hanging out with people who don't know how to juggle? You juggle. Next thing you know, you learn how to pass and you learn tricks. And then you get like balls that glow in the dark. And now you're a hit at parties. And so me and my buddy moved out to Colorado right after college, and we were the guys in town that knew how to juggle. And a lot of times at ski areas, like towards the end of the season, they have these big parties, and we're the guys that would show up and bring torches. And we were doing a lot of work with kids after school programs. And what do? You entertain the kids by juggling. And then that led to us starting a juggling club. And next thing we're like, oh, there's this little theater in town. Let's do a juggling show. And next thing we know, People are buying tickets to shows that we're putting on, and they want to hire us for parties and events and ribbon cuttings. And we're like, what the heck is going on? And so the first gig we ever got paid to do was in April of 1997. And it just one thing led to another. And next thing, we're writing our own shows. That there were three of us. The name of our group was called We're Not Clowns because we weren't clowns. We were jugglers. We had a really diverse skill set. One of our members was a videographer. One was a really good musician, so he would write music to go along with the shows. We would include fun videos that are part of the show. I would actually write the shows that's centered around three guys that knew how to juggle. So it was like our lives, but as a play. And and so yeah, we've done, actually, I just was flown out to Colorado last month. There's a venue called Strings Music Festival, and they hired us for a 28th anniversary show. And we sold out a 600 seat venue. And with magic, comedy, music, juggling, improv, just three best friends that get on stage and just are a riot.
I think that's amazing.
So, yeah, learning how to juggle took me to Europe. There's a sister city connection with the town I lived at in Colorado. We went over to Saas-Fee, Switzerland, and we used to sell T-shirts at our shows. Little We're Not Clowns T-shirts. So this is just the absolute craziest story. We had a good friend in Colorado. He had moved to California. We hadn't seen him in years. And so now we're over in Switzerland. We'd just gotten there, jet lagged as could be, and we're crashing before our gig that night. And one of us gets up, it's Kelly, his name's Kelly. I've got to go find out where we're performing tonight. I'll be back. So he comes back and he goes, "You're not going to believe who's here." "Who's here?" He's like, "Clark, our friend Clark that we knew in Steamboat, who'd moved away." It is a little tiny town in Switzerland, Saas-Fee. His wife was doing an art class there and he just tagged along. And in Saas-Fee, there are no cars allowed. The bus kind of drops you off at the village and you get out and it's a walking village. So he has no clue that we're there. He gets off the bus and he's wearing his We're Not Clowns t-shirt. And someone comes up to him and goes, "Oh, you're performing tonight." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And they show him a poster that We're Not Clowns is performing tonight in Saas-Fee, Switzerland. And so he was like, "Where are they staying?" So he found us. And I just love that story because we're so big that our fans follow us from the States to Europe, which is not true. But yeah, we did some shows in Europe.
I love that. But what are the chances that he wore that t-shirt
It's
that
crazy.
day?
No, like I wanted to be in his shoes for a moment of what, and it wasn't like we'd even seen him for a few
Yeah.
years. He had moved to San Diego
Oh my gosh.
and we hadn't seen him in years.
Yeah, he must have thought he was being punked or something.
Really? Yeah, so juggling, learning how to juggle back in I think it was probably 1995 led to some pretty amazing things. We owned a theater. I opened up my own little vaudeville theater with one of my members of the troupe,
Yeah.
and it's led me around the globe. But just something as simple as learning how to juggle. But
Well,
it wasn't the juggling, it was us as people.
yeah.
We were fun, funny, engaging people that it I had one guy come up to me one time. We'd been maybe doing this for about a year, and we were at this one show and we were just having such a good time. And this old guy, he just came up to us afterwards. He goes, "I don't care what you're doing. You two look like you're having so much fun together that I could just watch you guys do anything." I'm like, "Thanks, man. I appreciate that." And so I've just always tried to have fun in my life, whatever I do.
It's so interesting too, because I talk to people all the time about marketing and messaging and how to show up and help people understand what you do. And I'll talk to a lot of business owners, especially small business owners and entrepreneurs that are like, "I just don't want to brag and I don't want to show up and I don't want to be on video." And I'm like, okay, let's put the audience aside. Let's put the like being on video, social media, brain junk aside. What do you like about what you do? And then it's like their eyes change, like their face changes. They just start blah, 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 right? They can just talk about it. Like when someone really likes what you do, like you said, this guy saw you doing your thing, but because you loved it, he was entranced, right? He could just watch you. And so when I shift this and when I ask people like, okay, why do you love what you do? What are the moments in what you do that you really love it? And then they get lit up from the inside. And I'm like, that, put that in front of the people that you want to like you.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where so often we think about, oh, like the juggling. Oh, great, I'm going to learn how to juggling, but that's like this one thing in my life and that's never going to impact the rest of my life. But you saw the fact that, okay, I didn't learn this skill so that I could
Right.
go start a business and go to Switzerland.
Yeah.
I did this because it was joyful. There was something in it that had a spark I was drawn to, and it also connected you with people. And then the people fed off on each other. So it's just such a good lesson, I think. The reminder for me, like the sticky note writer downer for me, is just don't underestimate the power of learning something new, even if it feels small. And even if it feels unconnected to a plan.
Right. No, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be some part of some bigger plan.
I have a Walt Whitman quote that I live by. It's on my computer 24/7. It's do anything but let it produce joy. And it's how I've always tried to live my life. And it's led me to some weird places.
I love that. Talking about leading places, I promised everyone that you'd tell us the story of retracing the Lewis and Clark Trail.
Yes. Again, this my friend Kelly, that is 2/3 of the We're Not Clowns troupe with me. Before we had started We're Not Clowns, we're all from Buffalo, New York. This is before we moved to Steamboat. And back in the mid 90s, the internet was a new thing, right? Like it was back in the time when you would get the AOL discs in the mail. People were like, what is this? Oh, it's this thing called the internet. And he explained this concept of the internet to me, of computers where you can be wherever you want in the world and you can communicate. And I was like, that's pretty neat. And he had just finished reading the book Sacagawea, and I was just finishing up my history education degree, Buffalo State College. And he said, how cool would it be to be on the Lewis and Clark Trail and teaching school kids around the country about Lewis and Clark? I went, I'm in. And so for the next few years, we came up with this plan of creating a website, getting kids around the country to follow us as we retraced the Lewis and Clark Trail. And so we came up with the plan, and in the spring of 1998, we left Steamboat Springs, Colorado, in a beat up old Subaru with computers and a cell phone that connected to the internet, and we could download emails. And so we had this rudimentary website, and there were three of us, and we had some bikes on top of the car and juggling gear, and we had this itinerary where we were going to go to 10 different stops along the Lewis and Clark Trail. Each stop had a theme. We were going to connect with the local school and come in and do a teamwork assembly and go into the fourth grade was our target. And we were going to go into fourth grade classrooms and just talk about Lewis and Clark and having fun. It's good role model. Our goal was to promote active minds and bodies and be positive role models for children. That sells well in the schools. These young 20-something-year-old guys want to come in and be positive role models for kids. So we started out and we're camping a lot of the ways. And we get to our first stop was in South Dakota with a little one-room schoolhouse. We did a juggling show, talked about Lewis and Clark, and then we were making our way along the trail. The next stop was North Dakota. We slept at the replica of Fort Mandan where they spent their first winter. That's when they connected with Sacagawea and her baby, and then they made their way through Montana. We get to Montana, Great Falls, Montana, and the car is just making this awful noise. We're like, oh boy. So we drop it off at the mechanic, and he's like, all right, give me a few hours. And we drop it off, and we make our way to a local park, and we're just hanging out, reading the journals, and there's this parallel. So in Lewis and Clark had this collapsible boat they had made. It was made out of deer skins and like this frame. And what they needed to seal up these seams was pine pitch. And I don't know if you've ever been to Great Falls, Montana, but there aren't a lot of trees there. So they sealed it up the best they could. They put it in the water and they watched it sink immediately.
Oh.
And so he's in his journal, my heart sank as I watched my pride. We're reading that as we're walking back to this mechanic sees us walk up and he sees us and he He like puts his head down and like shakes his head. We're like, what? Good news? He's like, no, your car's an accident waiting to happen. I wouldn't drive it off this lot. We're at the base of the Rocky Mountain. What do we do? What do we do? So earlier that day, we had popped into a local elementary school. We met the principal of the school and we were like, hey, we're these three guys that are retracing the Lewis and Clark Trail. Can we come in and talk to your students? He's like, who are you? What are you doing? Luck would have it that evening, all of the principals of all of the elementary schools in Great Falls, Montana were having a meeting. He's like, why don't we put you on the agenda? You can come and talk about what we're doing. We're like, great, that sounds awesome. And so after we find out the news about the car, we're like, let's bike it. We have two bikes. We'll find a third and let's bike it from Great Falls to the ocean. We're like, great. So we go to this meeting of all these principals and we're like, hi, guess what? We're biking it now because our car's dead. And they're like, what? This is so cool. Come perform in my school. Come perform in my. So we got, I think, about 4 or 5 elementary schools. We had the opportunity to go do a little show because it took us a week to pivot from a support vehicle to biking. So this principal that had welcomed us with open arms, it turns out his dad had been the governor of Montana for 8 years. He's like, why don't you stay with me and my family while you guys are figuring out how to bike it? So now we've got a place to stay. You can leave your car in the garage. Great. And so, yeah, on Mother's Day of 1998, we set off on bikes to do 900 miles in 18 days. And we kept our schedule. We still went into schools just a little bit smellier than normal. And one of the recurring themes of Lewis and Clark is we proceeded on. And they had to rely on the kindness of strangers. There's so many Indian tribes that helped them out because they didn't see them as a threat, because they clearly weren't a war party. They had a female, they had a baby, they had a dog, they had a black man who was a marvel to them because they hadn't seen colored people. And so they weren't really viewed as a threat. And so they were able to lend a hand when they could with food and things like that. And so there were just so many parallels of what we did and the Lewis and Clark Trail. So yeah, we got to Fort Clatsop. We stayed at the coast, but the whole time we were popping into libraries. Internet cafes were a thing back then. And so wherever we were able to connect to the internet, we were able to update our website and post journals and pictures and still go into schools with our juggling stuff and do assemblies. Yeah.
I think that's so amazing. That's fantastic. Is the website still up?
No, I think you can go on the Wayback Machine and find it. The group our working name of this was called Nature's Web, which we were just trying to show how the web, the internet, and just how everything's interconnected. And so I think the Wayback Machine might have the Nature's website still on it, but no. But there was a book. Kelly's mom actually wrote a little book about it called The Legacy of Nature's Web, and it's got tons of great pictures and journal entries, the history of the trip.
How
Cool.
amazing. I would love it. I would love it if someone actually heard this episode that was in one of your classrooms. How funny would that be?
Yeah, we had schools in Florida, New York, and Colorado and California. We had so many different kids following us away along the way. And when we would go into a different classroom, we would enter a chat room
Yeah.
back when chat rooms were a thing, and we would have kids in Missoula, Montana, chatting with kids in New York and asking each other questions. And it was a lot of fun. We had such a great time doing it.
Amazing. I love that. I like how you guys had an idea, you brought it to life, and not only did you bring it to life, but when it didn't go quite as planned,
Yeah.
you also adapted. And it's so interesting that it also really then made you hold a little even tighter to some of the themes, like you said, in the
Yeah.
drills that you were modeling, right? That you were following.
We were written up in quite a few newspapers along the way. They'd catch wind of what we were doing. And I'll never forget meeting Brian Love, owner of Crohn's Appliance here in Newburgh. First time I met him, I said, oh, he mentioned his wife was from this little small town in Idaho called Orofino. And I went, oh, Orofino. We were written up in the Clearwater newspaper when we were biking the Lewis and Clark Trail. And I actually had a copy of it and I showed him. He said, what? Little logging town, fairly tiny. And it's just funny how it all worked out. And we didn't have a good plan. Our bikes had wire baskets on the back with bungee cords and tarps and juggling clubs sticking out, and it was just not, it wasn't the right way to do it.
But sometimes the right way can turn out.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like it. I like it. Doesn't have to be the perfect way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can turn out really
Yeah.
well.
It happened the way it was meant to happen.
Amazing. I love that. All right. If any of you guys watching or listening were part of that audience that saw the crew performance,
That
let
would
us
be
know
something.
in the chat.
Yeah, that would be something.
That'd be amazing. Scott, I appreciate you coming and being our expert guest on the show today and sharing your stories, sharing your expertise, a little inspiration for our crew here to build that community, build that team, maybe try something new, even if they don't see the purpose of it right off the bat. I know you've inspired me, and I know you've inspired some of the folks that have been listening today. So, last question of today, how do you stay inspired? Where do you get your inspiration for yourself?
I just I look at people that I admire, like Jim Henson, George Carlin, and comedy performers like Michael Davis. I just look at people that are good at what they did and just were outside the box. And I get such joy seeing old Muppet Show or behind the scene Muppet things like that. Just people must have thought he was nuts when he was creating some of these characters, and I don't know that he cared. And I don't know. The name of my LLC my wife and I created about a year ago is called Just Go For It. And that's the lesson I like to do in some of my talks is you don't have to overthink things. Sometimes if you just go for it, then you'll do amazing things. And so I just try to look at some of those pioneers that I'm sure they had a strong plan, but maybe it doesn't seem like it because they're just out there. And I don't know. I would say some of those types of people are what truly inspire me.
Amazing. Thank you, Scott. So I know there are, like I said, I'm sure there are people listening who have their little light bulbs going off and want to continue the conversation with you. We are going to include your website and your LinkedIn links wherever people are watching or joining us from. But if someone wants to continue the conversation with you, where's the best place to find you online?
LinkedIn probably would be the best. I'm on there. I'm not posting as regularly as I should, but I'm inspired to do more. But LinkedIn would be a great way to get me, or if they visited my website to sign up for the newsletter, and there's a phone number and an email on there as well.
Amazing. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your inspiration and wisdom with us today.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And for all of you listening and watching, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for welcoming Scott to the Sticky Note Marketing Show. If you have questions for Scott, definitely check out the links we'll be including wherever you're watching or listening to this. And as well, leave us a comment, subscribe, follow, and be sure not to miss the next guest expert coming to Sticky Note Marketing. We'll see you on the next episode.